Close your eyes. No, actually, don't. Because if you blink, you might miss the trick. It's 1995. You're not rich. You're not famous. You're not grinding side hustles on your phone at 2 a.m. You're a high school teacher, 10 years into the job, chalk dust on your sleeves, history class at 9 a.m. You live outside Toronto or Vancouver, somewhere boring, somewhere safe. You drive a beige Honda Civic. No screens, no subscriptions, just a radio and a cassette deck that eats your tapes. And today is, you're buying a house, not a mansion, a normal house, red brick, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom that squeaks when you turn the handle, a backyard big enough for a barbecue and a maple tree that explodes into orange every October. Price tag, $180,000. You gulp when you sign the papers. It feels expensive. You cancel the tropical vacations. You skip the fancy restaurants, but the math works. Your salary pays the mortgage. It pays for food, it pays for gas. And somehow, miraculously, you still save money. You're not winning the game, but you're playing it, and it's fair. This is the Canadian promise. Stable, predictable, boring, safe. Now, snap your fingers. What just happened? It's 2026. You're standing in front of the same house, same bricks, same roof, same maple tree, just thicker, older, heavier. But now there's a sign on the lawn, for sale. Asking price, $2.2 million. And that's not the scariest part. You walk inside. The basement is no longer a family space. It's been sliced into a rental unit. 3 international students live there, sleeping on thin mattresses, rotating schedules, whispering phone calls home at night. Upstairs, a young couple, both professionals, both 6-figure incomes, doctors. They should be thriving. Instead, they're terrified. One unexpected expense, a car repair, a rate hike, a medical emergency, and everything collapses. Children? Not even a conversation. That's a financial extinction event. Here's the twist. They are the same people as the teacher from 1995. Same discipline, same effort, same rule following. But the game didn't just change, it changed without telling them. So what happened while everyone was asleep? Look around, no police tape, no sirens, no riots, just a polite country with good manners and bad math. Canada didn't collapse violently, it hollowed out quietly. If you're under 40 and living here, let me be very clear. You are not lazy. You are not entitled. You are not imagining things. You are living inside a 40-year economic experiment that failed spectacularly. And today, we're doing something uncomfortable. We're lifting the rug. We're going to look at the numbers politicians avoid, the incentives nobody talks about, the mechanism that turned a G7 nation into a real estate investment vehicle with a flag. But first, we need to answer one uncomfortable question. What does it even mean for a country to be rich anymore? In the 20th century, a rich country made things. Cars, steel, electronics, medicine. Factories got better. Productivity rose. When productivity rose, wages followed. That's how you get a middle class. But sometime around the turn of the century, Canada made a quiet decision. It stopped being a factory, and it became a casino. Now pause if you're an alien hovering over Vancouver right now. Hello, welcome. You might be confused. Why, you ask, are these humans trading rectangles of dirt for millions of credits instead of inventing fusion reactors? Great question. The answer is a disease. It's called the productivity trap. So how did Canada catch it? For the last 20 years, the world split in two. The US built tech giants. Asia built advanced manufacturing. Canada? Canada discovered something easier. Why invest $10 million into a risky startup when you can buy land, wait, and sell it later for millions, tax-free, no factory explosions, no payroll headaches, no innovation risk, just vibes and zoning laws? This created a new rule book, a system where owning beats doing. This is the asset economy, and it didn't just change money, it changed psychology. So what message did the system send? If you work for a living, you pay income tax, payroll tax, sales tax, you contribute. But if you bought a house in the right neighborhood in 2005, you earned more money last year by sleeping than a heart surgeon earned saving lives. The surgeon paid a 53% marginal tax rate. The house? Zero. The message was unmistakable. Work is optional. Ownership is royalty. And once that message sinks in, innovation dies. But this wasn't the final boss, because every rigged game needs gatekeepers. So who controlled the board? Go to a grocery store in the US. Dozens of choices. Now go in Canada. 3. Cell phone plan in Europe, 20 euros. Unlimited data. Canada, $80. Data cap. Feels like 2012 called and wants its bandwidth back. Canada isn't a free market. It's 3 grocery chains, 5 banks, and a handful of telecoms wearing a trench coat. Protected, shielded, untouchable. Every tap of your card siphons money upward to shareholders who never face competition. This is the hidden tax nobody voted for. So now you're squeezed, wages stagnate, costs explode. But even this wasn't the knockout punch. That came from one decision, a decision made in 2008. What did Canada do differently? In 2008, housing bubbles exploded around the world. The US collapsed. Europe burned. Canada? Nothing happened. We celebrated. Our banks are stable. Our system works. But here's the problem. We didn't fix anything. We doubled down. Interest rates dropped to zero and stayed there. Global money poured in. Housing stopped being shelter and became a speculative asset. Homes were no longer places to live. They were chips on a table. And the result? A system older than capitalism itself. What system did we resurrect? Feudalism is simple. Your destiny depends on land. If you're young in Canada today, your future is decided by one question. Did your parents buy a house? If yes, congratulations. You may enter the castle. If no, welcome to serfdom. You'll spend 50 to 70% of your income paying someone else's mortgage. Your rent funds their retirement. This isn't theory, it's arithmetic. And it created a war nobody declared. Who's fighting who? Baby boomers didn't cheat. They followed the rules they were given. But those rules created trillions in housing wealth. And they vote. They vote to restrict supply. They vote to preserve character. They fight apartments like dragons guarding gold. The ladder didn't break, it was pulled up. So what happens when young people can't move forward? In the 1970s, first-time buyers were 25. Today, 38. That's 13 lost years. Years where you don't have kids. Years where businesses aren't started. Years where risk becomes impossible. Canada's fertility rate collapsed to 1.33. We priced ourselves out of the future. And just as the fire was burning, the accelerant was poured. What policy made everything worse? Fast. Immigration is culturally good, but economics doesn't care about feelings. In recent years, Canada added over 1 million people annually. Homes built? Not even close. Hospitals, transit, infrastructure? No, instead we imported desperation. Students sold a dream. Workers trapped in survival mode. Uber Eats in snowstorms. This wasn't immigration. It was a labor supply shock. And who benefited? Why raise wages when labor is endless? Why automate when humans are cheaper? Oligopolies smiled, rent soared, wages froze, wealth transferred upward, again. And for the average person, reality fractured. So what does daily life feel like now? You walk past empty luxury condos. You check grocery prices weekly. Politicians brag about GDP. But per capita GDP, falling. More people. Same pie. Your slice shrinks. And then there's the chain nobody sees. Debt. So how deep does it go? Canadians are among the most indebted people on earth. We used homes as ATMs. Now rates normalized. And something terrifying appeared. Negative amortization. You pay every month, and your debt grows anyway. The government knows the bubble is dangerous, but they can't let it pop. Why? Housing props up GDP, banks, pensions. Pop the bubble, everything collapses. So a choice was made: save the system, sacrifice the young, and the consequences are spreading, where are the smartest people going? Engineers, doctors, tradespeople. They look south, cheaper homes, higher wages. They leave. Who stays? The old, the trapped, the indebted. This creates a death spiral. What does Canada become if this continues? No tanks, no chaos, just for lease, signs, moving trucks, quiet despair, a boutique hotel for the global rich, staffed by a permanent underclass. But this isn't just Canada. So what's the warning for everyone else? Canada is the experiment. What happens when finance replaces production? You can't build a nation on condos and coffee foam. Eventually, you run out of money. So is there a way back? Yes, but it hurts. Break the oligopolies, rezone cities aggressively, crash housing prices, tax speculation, reward work. And say the hard truth, a house is shelter, not a retirement plan. Until then, young people aren't imagining poverty, they're living it. So now the final question, is it you or the bank? Do you accept the system, fight it, or leave? It's the Canadian dream isn't dead, it just moved, and it's waiting to see if you'll chase it or rebuild it. So, who owns your future?